All right, continuing coverage of private Minnesota Game 4, May through July 2020. I'm playing as Germany. We have some other notables from the club. If you know their names, you know who they are. Let's continue. Showing the orders here as well. Builds in winter. If you missed the previous video, you'll see that I'm in a pretty good situation as Germany. I'm in the North Sea as of 01. France is on side. Russia maybe on side. Working with Turkey against a pretty strong AI, which opened Aquila Panta. So let's go. And look at 03. So, yeah, France goes ahead and takes Wales. England had tried to prevent a convoy of my own, but I went for the Pith and Ska instead. Russia did try to work with England, I think, correctly at this point. And just in case France did want to, try to get cake and eat it too, I did cover Ruhr. Also playing the Baltic, realizing, as Doug Moore and others who have played Germany, that if the North can be secured, it makes things a lot easier elsewhere. At that point, even if there's a strong England and France, but Scandinavia is secure, it just becomes easier to defend. And unless Russia and Austria are on side in that situation, you're going to be comfortable even if you don't have an ally actually by that point, if Scandinavia is yours and maybe even STP. So I did opt for Baltic. Also thinking through, like, okay, how tight are France and I here? Let's see what happens on the rest of the board as well. There was some interesting press in 1903 spring around what France might do with Marseille, okay, having returned from Spain. And so that in fall negotiations, this was the move that was discussed. What to do about this. I didn't love this move from Russia as well. You can see he's concerned of kind of France and I working together to pick off England, and needs to do some balancing. So I think it's a good move. It does give up Galicia, so he has some work to do in his fall negotiations. Fortunately, with my self-balance, I'm still in Munich, so it's not going to bother me. But, maybe even from Bohemia, he can play to Tyrolia and get behind. We'll see. He may not have quite enough units, but you can see that he and Turkey do get the position to at least hold. And Italy, interestingly, does try to preempt this move to cover Rome and Apulia. I remember working with Italy on at this point, like trying to figure out how we want to play the game going forward. If he and Austria are as tight as they are, can we work together in some kind of central alliance going forward? Of course, I don't need Italy's help, but I may as well get on his good side. And so I think I was able to score some diplomatic points by suggesting this move to Piedmont was happening, discreetly, of course, so that France doesn't come back and be overly concerned of me going forward. So let's see what happens next in the game. Fall. So interestingly here, France seems to have opted for a holding here. I think this is probably from a negotiation with Italy, but Italy just continues into Lyon, is able to cover with Apulia. By the way, I should mention that part of the plan from France's perspective, he was definitely angling for me to pop down to Tyrolia, but at that point, I didn't feel comfortable leaving Munich behind at this stage, and I actually did something which isn't recommended in a vacuum, which is to take a center take a single center with a stab. But the thing is that there was more context here. So it looks like I just took Belgium for a single center stab, and France, looks totally fine from one point of view. He's going to pick up Liverpool. Okay, this is starting to look in the south a little bit dicey for him. Maybe he ticked off Italy enough to bring Italy's wrath back upon him. Italy is obviously a huge strategic component of any diplomacy game. Ability to defect the game, going forward, as Andrew Goff likes to talk about, more than any other power, at least from a diplomatic perspective. How France and Italy are playing the Mediterranean is very interesting for the rest of the board. Well, this looks like a one center stab, but Italy seems to be on side. France, is not going to be able to do much about that in the immediate term, even while not losing a build. Meanwhile, I'm able to work out a deal with Russia. Obviously, I can take Norway myself, but if Russia and I can do a deal here, then we can stay on side, and actually that could work out for both of us at some point. So we talked about Norwegian coming back to Barents, but I went ahead and offered, why don't you just jump out to Norwegian? Let's see what we can do from there. Maybe you can get in on this action over in Eddy. Meanwhile, this army can come back and contribute. Okay, now he does take Gal, which is amazing given that Vienna is here and could defend. Of course, Serbia and Budapest were busy reclaiming Romania from Turkey. So a small consolation in the near term to give up Gal. But overall, I'm feeling really good. I've come to some kind of a détente with Russia. I've had to stab France at this point, or I've decided to stab France. I didn't need to, but I figured if Italy is going to play decisively this way, that Spain and Marseille and Portugal will eventually fall. I'll be able to bust through into Burgundy at one point, and I don't really need a strong ally at this juncture. If anyone is my strong ally right now, it is Italy. England's prepared to sit. Is too weak without fleet coverage, and Russia and I have come to this détente so that he can reroute his unit. The builds look like this. France putting out an army in Marseille, gonna have to try to defend Spain. But meanwhile, his fleets are quite far north here. So does he reroute them now and keep England in the game? Possibly let England take Liverpool and work with him as an EF. We'll see. Russia seems to be on side with me, but he could turn. Like, this fleet is not necessarily on my side just because he gave up Norway. But now I do have Scandinavia. I'm able to put down 2 armies, which is huge for me. If Russia and Austria decided to swing up, I can now defend decisively. So that was a huge turn for me in 03. So let's just press ahead into 04 and see how players want to play this. So we'll start in the east, and Turkey kind of rearranges its position here. Russia feels very out of position, having removed Sev, and actually possibly makes a misorder by not ordering at all. Very possibly the case there. And Turkey does swing up, and Austria is able to reposition into Bol. It looks like Austria and Italy will be trading the center there. And Naples comes over to Tyrrhenian Sea, and Venice to Adriatic. So I do opt to carry forward into Germany. So I make this guess here, into France. And France does actually dislodge Belgium, but I go ahead and retreat I go ahead and retreat into Picardy, right? So Holland is open behind, Ruhr is open behind, but because I'm backfilling Munich, things are actually going to be just fine for me going forward. So that actually is an example of kind of a forward retreat, which, as you'll see, it works out pretty well for me. If we think about a forward retreat as something to consider going forward, maybe I'll just grab a screenshot of this, pop this into the book as well. So let's look at what happens in the fall. And I think this is where France's fate is sealed. We had some kind of banter back and forth around which centuries he's going to cover and so on and so forth. And I decided to let him have Belgium. He opted to try to take London. Because it's possible I could have used Picardy to retake Belgium, but if he was going to give up Brest, then I was going to take it, and obviously Paris was mine regardless. So France's fate is really sealed here, even as he still has 6 units. Italy's coming. I'm coming. England can't help him with 2 armies. And I do go ahead and help Russia into Eddie, just to keep things cordial between he and I for the near term, since I really don't want the AI to run him over. If I didn't give him this center, then Russia probably has to remove again, and maybe he would make a mistake and remove an army over here, which he desperately needs to hold off the AI. So, from a balance of power standpoint, I did want to offer Eddie, and maybe I can pick it up later myself. I think that's it for 04. A really good year for me as Germany. Good year for Italy and Austria as well. They're able to extend their position, maintain their alliance, defend against France's kind of push into Piedmont in the previous year. And England does exit the game here. I'm up to 9. I get to put down another army in Munich. So now it's just a matter of Italy and I, cleaning up that side. But you will notice that there is this weak spot, which we'll examine in the next video, of the Ionian Sea. So that is enough to slow Italy down. And it's not clear, how tight the AI is here now that Austria is up to 7, right? And facing a weak Turkey and a weak Russia and a weak Turkey. So Austria may have some plans to make strides himself. Meanwhile, I'm looking pretty good as well. So let's look at 1905 in the next video. You can always find more details about this game and my other thoughts on diplomacy in the comments. leanpub.com/wind. Really appreciate your support. Thanks.